Good evening, friends. Welcome to Skyjet Wings. Swedish defense firm Saab wants Canada to buy and build its fighter jets. The firm is pitching a partnership with Bombardier and promising to create up to 10,000 jobs along with it. The company that makes the Gripen has told CTV News that 10,000 manufacturing and research jobs could land in Canada if Ottawa adds the Swedish fighter jet to its military fleet. In Canada, to do their own upgrades, to build parts of it, to do final assembly tests.
We are prepared to do that technology transfer to Canada and support that buildup. In March 2025, a single announcement from Ottawa rippled far beyond Canada's borders. The country's defense minister revealed that Canada was taking a hard second look at its deal to buy 88 F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin, a move few people saw coming. The contract that once carried a $19 billion price tag has already swelled past $27.7 billion, with long-term costs projected to climb as high as $33 billion. That number alone raised eyebrows, but the real surprise sat elsewhere.
Canada was openly weighing a return to Sweden's Gripen E, the same aircraft that lost to the F-35 during the 2021 competition. No NATO country had ever gone this far after signing on to America's flagship fighter program. This decision signals more than budget anxiety or procurement drama. It hints at a deeper shift in how a middle power navigates pressure, loyalty, and independence in a tense global landscape. Why is Canada willing to reopen a deal this big, this late, and this publicly? And what happens if it actually walks away?
Canada's path to the F-35 has never followed a straight line, and the story stretches back nearly 20 years. In 2010, Ottawa made a bold and controversial decision by announcing plans to buy 65 F-35 fighter jets without running a competitive tender. That move immediately triggered political backlash and public concern, driven by fears over cost transparency, long-term obligations, and whether the aircraft truly fit Canada's defense needs. Critics argued that the government had locked itself into a program before fully understanding the financial and strategic consequences, while supporters insisted the F-35 represented the future of air combat and guaranteed interoperability with allies. The pressure became intense enough that by 2014, the entire plan was put back under review, reopening questions that many believed had already been settled. Nearly a decade later, after years of studies, debates, and delays, Canada returned to the table with a full and open competition. In 2023, the government formally selected the F-35A Lightning II once again, this time committing to 88 aircraft.
Friends, if you enjoy this video, like, subscribe Skyjet Wings for more new updates. The deal was framed as the most significant defense procurement in Canadian history, both in scale and cost. Under the agreement, the first 16 jets were scheduled for delivery in early 2026, with the remainder arriving in phases through 2032. These aircraft were meant to replace the CF-18 Hornets, a fleet that had served Canada for more than 40 years and was increasingly expensive to maintain. At the time of signing, officials described the decision as settled and final, the result of exhaustive analysis and careful comparison. That sense of certainty did not last long. As 2025 approached, the political and economic environment around the program began to change rapidly. Trade relations between Canada and the United States grew tense under President Donald Trump, who openly threatened sweeping tariffs on Canadian exports. At one point, Trump proposed a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods, a move that sent shockwaves through Canadian industries already under pressure. His public remarks went further, suggesting that Canada should consider becoming the 51st U.S. state.
Comments that sparked outrage across the country and hardened public attitudes toward economic and political dependence on Washington. Defense policy, once treated as a separate and technical issue, suddenly became entangled with questions of sovereignty and national dignity. The turning point arrived in June 2025, when Auditor General Karen Hogan released a detailed report that fundamentally altered the public understanding of the F-35 program. According to her findings, the widely cited price tag of 19 billion Canadian dollars did not reflect the true cost of the project. When infrastructure upgrades, advanced weapon systems, and initial operating expenses were included, the figure rose to $27.7 billion. Over the full life cycle of the program, Hogan warned, costs could reach as high as $33 billion. That represented nearly a 75% increase over the original estimate presented to Parliament. The numbers landed with force, not only because of their size, but because they confirmed long-standing fears that the program's real cost had been understated from the beginning. With those figures now public, Ottawa found itself under renewed pressure to explain whether the F-35 remained the best option available. The question no longer centered solely on performance, but on value, control, and long-term consequences. It was at this moment that an old competitor quietly re-entered the conversation. Saab, the Swedish aerospace firm behind the Gripen, had lost the 2021 competition, yet it never fully disengaged from Canada. Behind the scenes, the company maintained relationships with Canadian officials and defense planners, positioning itself as an alternative should doubts about the F-35 resurface. Those ties became visible in August 2025 when Canada and Sweden signed a new framework agreement focused on defense and aerospace cooperation, with a strong emphasis on Arctic security. The timing was not accidental. The Arctic has grown more central to Canada's defense strategy as Russia and China expand their presence in the region, and Saab was quick to highlight the Gripen's design origins in Sweden's own harsh northern environment. The company's proposal went beyond aircraft specifications. Saab pledged to assemble every Gripen E in Canada, offering full technology transfer that would allow Canadian technicians to maintain, modify, and upgrade the jets without relying on foreign approval. According to Saab, the program would create between 12,000 and 12,600 jobs across Canada's aerospace sector, a promise that immediately drew political attention. Those employment figures shifted the tone of the debate. What had once been framed as a choice between aircraft now touched on industrial strategy and economic independence. Industry Minister Melanie Joly publicly stated that Canada needed to demand more in return for military procurement spending, signaling openness to Saab's proposal. She confirmed that discussions were underway about assembling the Gripen in Canada, reinforcing the message that defense purchases could serve as tools for domestic growth rather than purely military transactions. Saab's pitch also leaned heavily on adaptability. Sierra Fullerton, representing Saab Canada, argued that the company had moved beyond rigid ideas of aircraft generations, emphasizing that Gripen technology could be upgraded continuously. The implication was clear. In an era of rapid technological change, flexibility mattered as much as stealth or raw performance. That argument resonated with those uneasy about long-term dependence on a single foreign system. From this environment emerged a compromise idea that began circulating in policy circles. Canada could accept delivery of the first 16 F-35s already paid for, then fill the rest of the fleet with Canadian-built Gripens. On paper, the concept appeared to balance alliance commitments with industrial autonomy.
In practice, it raised difficult questions that refused to stay buried. In December 2025, Radio Canada published leaked evaluation documents from the 2021 Future Fighter Capability Project, offering a rare glimpse into how decisively the F-35 had outperformed its competitors. The numbers were stark. Out of a possible 60 points, the F-35 scored 57.1, while the Gripen E scored 19.8. On mission effectiveness, the F-35 achieved a rating of 97% compared with 22% for the Gripen. In terms of long-term upgrade potential across the aircraft's life cycle, the F-35 received a perfect score of 100%, while the Gripen reached only 28%. These were not marginal differences, they represented a fundamental gap in capability as assessed by Canada's own evaluators. Senior figures within the Royal Canadian Air Force responded publicly. Retired Lieutenant General Yvon Blondair emphasized that any aircraft chosen would carry Canadian pilots into combat, particularly in an Arctic environment facing advanced threats from Russia and China. Survival, he argued, depended on overwhelming technological superiority. Major General Chris McKenna echoed that view, stating bluntly that Canada required absolute overmatch, not compromise.
He warned that a force built around 16 F-35s, supplemented by an undefined number of Gripens, would fail to deliver the deterrent power provided by a full fleet of 88 stealth fighters. That reality prompted warnings from industry leaders. Bombardier CEO Éric Martel cautioned that withdrawing from the F-35 could trigger consequences for Canadian firms holding contracts with the U.S. government. Bombardier alone maintains 2 such contracts, one for liaison aircraft and another for surveillance platforms. A sudden shift in defense policy could place those agreements at risk, along with opportunities for dozens of smaller suppliers embedded in the same network. Even the Gripen alternative carried hidden dependencies. The aircraft relies on the American-made General Electric F414 engine, meaning the United States would still control export licenses. Analysts noted that Washington has used such leverage before, denying or delaying approvals to influence foreign policy outcomes. In that sense, switching aircraft would not automatically remove American influence. Public debate also swirled around fears of a so-called kill switch in the F-35. While Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon have repeatedly denied the existence of any remote shutdown capability, the rumor spread widely on Canadian social media, amplifying skepticism. The reality lies elsewhere. The F-35 depends on continuous software updates managed by the Pentagon's Joint Program Office. That office controls maintenance systems, upgrade pathways, and most critically, the aircraft source code. With the exception of Israel, no buyer receives access to that code, creating a level of dependence unseen in previous generations of fighter procurement. If access to updates were restricted, the aircraft's effectiveness could degrade rapidly. This model represents a break from historical norms. Traditionally, purchasing a fighter jet meant owning the ability to operate and sustain it independently. Under the F-35 framework, autonomy is limited by design. President Trump once openly stated that aircraft sold to allies would never match U.S. versions because alliances can change. Without source code access, buyers must trust that updates will remain forthcoming and sufficient. Those concerns were reinforced by another Auditor General report in June 2025, which highlighted rising costs, infrastructure gaps, and personnel shortfalls within the F-35 program itself. Adding a second aircraft type would compound those challenges rather than solve them. As of January 2026, no final decision has been made. The government of Prime Minister Mark Carney remains committed to the first 16 F-35s already in production. While the fate of the remaining 72 aircraft remains uncertain, Minister Jolie has stated that talks with Lockheed Martin will continue into early 2026, aimed at securing greater industrial benefits for Canada. Defense Procurement Secretary Stephen Furr has indicated that while a complete withdrawal appears unlikely, all options remain under consideration as discussions with Saab and European partners continue. What are your thoughts? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more and turn on notifications. We will